Yesterday, we got into this at the end of the show, and I thought it deserved some more space to breathe and to dissect. It is more apparent than ever that Brett Favre knew exactly what he was doing when he was trying to divert funds from those in poverty, those in need of help of federal funds and state funds in his state of Mississippi, and pressed on the governor to divert those funds to build a volleyball facility at the University of Southern Miss, where he had family, and he had family on that volleyball team. And Favre hid behind the explanation that he didn't know where the money came from. He couldn't be held responsible. He didn't know where it came from. And that other accusations of him getting paid millions of dollars for a no-show job, that he actually did do the job, he says, and whatever they deserved in a refund, he gave back more than $1 million. But text messages have now been uncovered between Brett Favre and the governor of Mississippi at the time, 5 years ago. And the governor explains that you have to be careful about how you use these funds and where they go. And that if you misappropriate them, you can go to jail. And the governor jokes, "I'm too old to go to jail. I'm too old for a felony," with the sunglasses emoji. And a spokesperson for the governor's office, Brett Favre, exchanged text messages, and Brett Favre explicitly asked, can the media track where this money comes from and where it goes? So Favre, with these text messages, shows himself. And one of the things that I'm disappointed by, but I think I understand why, is the lack of coverage this is getting in a sports media realm. You know, honestly, every NFL pregame show, Fox, NFL Network, and CBS should have talked about this on Sunday. This is one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. He was on the NFL 100 team. He's one of the most popular NFL players of all time, one of the greatest NFL players of all time. He is not that far in the rear view. It's not like he played in the 50s or 60s. He played in the 90s and 2000s. He was in an NFC championship game 14 years ago. This should be a story. This should be discussed. First Take should have it. Get Up should have it. Who Needs to Talk or Speak for Yourself or whatever these shows are should be discussing this. The NFL pregame shows should discuss it. These should be discussion topics because one of the most popular players ever that paraded himself around as a person of the people, as a player of the fans. I mean, the reason Brett Favre is so beloved was that he seemed like you and me. Crack a beer, jump into the stands, play like it's Sandlot football, all these memorable moments, a Super Bowl championship. What's the most indelible moment of Brett Favre's career? It's either A, taking his helmet off and running around the field of the Superdome in the Super Bowl like he's a kid. That's what we would do. Or it's when he went out on the field on Monday Night Football after his dad passed away and had one of the games of his life. Just what I would do. Honor dad. Play like a kid. Play for the love of the game. Brett Favre encapsulated all of these things, this lore, this mythology about football. Brett Favre was mic'd up by NFL Network. Farted on his offensive linemen. Whispered in his wide receivers' ears to make them laugh. Burped in his coaches' faces. Jumped up on guys. Dog-piled. I mean, he was playing with that spirit and that love and that childlike passion that we all can connect to because The highest level that we've ever played was in the backyard or Pop Warner or high school. None of us got paid to play football or paid to play sports, so we can relate to that type of exuberance. Brett Favre was that. I mean, he sells Wranglers, for crying out loud. This is not a guy that sells crypto. He sells Wranglers. He sells like foot fungus medication. That's Brett Favre, one of us. And again, beloved. Beloved. And Brett Favre stole money from poor people. There's no other way to put it. He knowingly stole money from poor people. And as the local papers, television stations, and journalists and websites have dug into this, they have done such a tremendous job because they are really telling the story that was going to go untold. But that the state of Mississippi, one of the poorest that we have in America, has long had an issue with funds from taxpayers that are supposed to go to funding programs for those in need, children to be fed, parents that need supplies, education, etc., and have long been used as political favors. They have taken money out of this, many politicians over throughout that state's unfortunate history, and used all the money that was supposed to be, or some of the money that was supposed to be earmarked for these poor people, and used it for their own political favors. And in this case, it was, let's build a new facility on the campus of Southern Miss. And Brett Favre pressed the governor's office for an indoor practice facility to help recruit kids to come play for the football team to get Southern Miss back up to a national standard. And Brett Favre knew what he was doing was wrong, and he did it anyway. Now, it's not the whole story, because the whole story is that that governor's office, like many of the politicians in charge of that state, have done this for a long time. That was only one of the funds that were diverted, misappropriated, and didn't go to poor people. Didn't go to people who needed it. Didn't go to people that were in need. Did not go to the places that they were supposed to go to. And it's just that Brett Favre is the most salacious. It's just the most noteworthy. It's just the biggest celebrity. Ted DiBiase, former WWF wrestler, involved in this as well. These were political favors done by friends of the political machinery in Mississippi and put into their pockets for favors. But from a football standpoint, you know, we're unlikely to discuss the legacy of Ted DiBiase, but we are likely to discuss something that Brett Favre does. And I think the reason why Favre is not front and center for all of these shows that are paid to discuss sports and topics like the most popular athletes in the world, or one of the most popular athletes of one of the most popular sports in the world, is that we're not comfortable talking about non-sports things. You know, if you think about it, whatever your chosen profession is, or your chosen place of knowledge, might be a hobby, might be your profession, but there's probably something that you know better than almost anybody else does, that you just absolutely love. You know, a French foreign film for the 1960s. You might have seen all of them. Might have read reviews on them, dug into Wikipedia on them, have them all on DVD. I mean, everybody has that thing where they just know more about it than anybody else. And in the sports world, I mean, like, sports media can talk about sports till the cows come home. Everything is our second language. It's our first language in many ways. Once it starts bleeding into politics and finances and how contributions work and how all of that stuff that we don't usually talk about works, I think guys get scared. And, you know, you ask a bunch of former athletes and former coaches to go start talking about the way politics work, and it's like, it's the same way that we were just bagging on that news anchor that didn't know how to say the Yankees didn't clinch the AL East by saying they avoided clinching the AL East. No, they didn't avoid it. That meant you purposely tried to avoid it or not do it. They didn't avoid it. It's the same bit, and it's too bad because it takes digging into, it takes work, it takes knowledge, it takes understanding it, but it's worth talking about. It's worth talking about because Brett Favre wasn't Mark Chmura. Brett Favre wasn't Dorsey Levens. Brett Favre wasn't just a football player that happened to play 25 years ago to win a Super Bowl. He is one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time and still one of the most popular. And the guy stole money from poor people knowingly in a state where the poor people can't afford it, to have somebody else steal it. And not that any state can afford it, but Mississippi particularly is one of the highest poverty rates in our country, and it's sickening to see this type of thing happen. And I wonder also if in sports we have direct results, and so it's easy. Aaron Judge walks 4 times last night, didn't hit 61. We know how to talk about that. The Bills can't get out of bounds at the final play, so they lose. Ken Dorsey goes crazy. We know how to talk about that. There is a standings. There is a tote board. We have the stats. Well, what's the stories of the people that didn't get that money because Brett Favre stole it for a volleyball facility? What's the story of the moms that couldn't afford diapers or the dads that couldn't put food on the table? What are those stories? Because then it gives you some context. Dixie Landan tweets at me, and he's in Mississippi, just outside of Oxford, I believe. Dixie Landan tweets, I know people that Favre basically stole that money from. Hell, I was one of those people. My daughter got Medicaid and WIC when she was a baby. That dude is an asshat, probably has enough money in his front pocket to pay for all of that. And ain't that the truth? I mean, Brett Favre made tens of millions, if not $100 million or more in his playing career just on salary. And here he is trying to divert funds, misappropriate funds for poor people to go build a volleyball facility for his family or for his image. You know, it appears to me that Favre had become an intermediary for donations at Southern Miss and that he had helped green light some construction projects and that he was some type of go-between for connecting money people to building people and pressing on the governor, hey, everybody, you're going to want everybody to know that you're a Southern Miss supporter, aren't you? So he's kind of like the front man that presses on people to get the cash done, to get deals done, to get buildings done. And he knew what he was doing was wrong. He was told what he was doing was wrong. He asked to make sure nobody knew what he was doing because he knew it was wrong. And he did it from our most vulnerable. He took from our most vulnerable. Man, I know that America is split and polarized. I know that there's somebody on the other side of the political spectrum or many people that you can't believe think that way, do those things. You can't cross the aisle. You just are completely at odds with, and you can't meet in the middle. I get why that's happening. I understand how that's happening. It's disappointing and disheartening, but there's one thing we can all agree on. You don't manipulate the people that are in the greatest need. We all try to help. No matter where you are on the political spectrum, you know you help those people that are in the greatest need, whether it's through your own charities, helping somebody in your neighborhood, helping somebody in your family. I know everybody does this. It's human nature to help out those in the greatest need. When you see something or somebody that really desperately needs help, you are there. I know it. That's what America does. That's the one great thing we always do. And Brett Favre did the opposite. He manipulated and stole from the people in the greatest need. He's a villain. He's heartless. He's gutless. He's a criminal. And people need to say it. It's not easy to earmark or identify an athlete, a legend, a popular celebrity as a bad guy, morally corrupt. But that's exactly what happened. And Brett Favre might have that smile and run around the field without a helmet on and sell Wranglers and just be a good old boy. He is a criminal. And he knew what he did was wrong. And he stole from poor people, the people that needed it most. And that needs to be vocalized.